This is a review I've been dreading since I launched the Saturn Day weekly reviews back in January 2015. January 3rd, believe it or not. Can't believe it's already been over a year. It shows us that for every single Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and for every Metroid Prime, there is a Contra Legacy of War. What do I mean by that? Only that with every incredible 2D transition to 3D, there are those games that simply don't work in 3D. Or at least that was the first impression games like Contra Legacy of War gave you upon first playing them. Now I'll warn you all right now, I absolutely detest this game. And so if you're looking for a glowing recommendation on this one, you're gonna have to look elsewhere. What you're seeing here is based on the ultra expensive Saturn version, complete with 3D glasses, which I'll get to in just a sec. The game was developed by Appaloosa and published by Konami, and is an absolute abomination of a Contra game. You have to understand that this game was released in 1996, 2 years after I had plowed through Contra hardcores on the Genesis with a friend of mine. While I was never the die-hard Contra fan like Steven, I always preferred Castlevania myself. I was genuinely excited to see how Contra would play on the PlayStation and Saturn. I mean, just look at how awesome Castlevania Symphony of the Night turned out back in '95. Well, oh boy, imagine my surprise upon first laying eyes on this one when I brought it home. Yeah, needless to say, my friend and I were absolutely disgusted. A year later, my friend would actually move to another country. And I still say it's because of Contra Legacy of War. Contra Legacy of War is a 3D shooter where you begin by selecting one of 4 ridiculously generic-looking, futuristic, quote-unquote, badasses. And then you're challenged with bringing on the pain. The problem is, it's virtually impossible to do. The gameplay is extremely sluggish and the game looks absolutely horrendous. Those nice bright colors from the previous games are gone, and everything just looks primitive and generic. It absolutely does not feel like a Contra game whatsoever. Sure, there are weapon upgrades, which include a flamethrower and a spread shot amongst others, but ultimately the action and placement of enemies are what destroy the experience. First off, you won't see half of the enemies coming at you because of the placement of 3D objects, meaning bullets will just randomly come out of nowhere to attack you. Worse still is that you have the ability to jump or to lay on the ground, but you can almost never tell which height the enemy bullets are at, so you just constantly get hit. One hit means 1 life. After you run out of lives, you have to begin the stage again from the start, and after a few attempts, even with a friend, you'll get frustrated and turn the game off, never to return. Now I will admit, the action itself is not sluggish. Your character does control smoothly, but it's the placement of the enemies and the objects that make it feel sluggish. The controls take some getting used to as well, but thanks to the already mentioned problems, even when you do get used to them, they always feel cumbersome. You can press and hold the R button and then shoot in order to spray your shots around the screen in any direction by just moving the D-pad around. Or you can press the L button to toggle strafing on and off. These are really solid options, but the problem is they do virtually nothing to help you survive. Each of the 4 characters plays exactly the same, except they gain 2 character-specific weapons, assuming you live that long to get the power-ups. There are 4 total weapons per character, including the machine gun and flamethrower, and everyone has access to grenades. So basically there are 2 different unique weapons that each character gets, like I mentioned before. The graphics haven't aged well at all, and to be honest, they didn't really look that nice back in '96. Coming off the SNES and Genesis games, which featured lots of color, everything here is drab and bland. I mentioned that the 3D glasses were included in this game, you know, those flimsy red and blue glasses, and they do little to assist the game, and they just feel like a tacked on gimmick. I can't tell you how badly I was disappointed by this game when I first played it. And returning all these years later, it hasn't improved at all. The soundtrack is much like the graphics, bland. And this is crazy talk, because the previous Contra games always had rip-roaring soundtracks and great sound effects, but not here. Overall, Contra Legacy of War taught me a very valuable lesson that I still remember to this very day. Don't assume a game's going to be good based solely on its name. This was the first time a major franchise had let me down this much. I could live with the changes made to Super Mario Bros. 2, Zelda 2, and even Castlevania 2, but this was just too much. I'll be very interested to hear what you all think of this game, because to me, paying over $100 for this game is absolutely insane. I think it's very telling that the hidden game that's featured within Contra Legacy of War is probably better than the real game itself. Now, if you absolutely must experience this game, go ahead and pick up the cheaper PlayStation 1 version. But I highly recommend you stay very far away from this one.